I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association serving companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. Welcome to the latest episode of Take 20, created by the PDMI Brand Response Council. These 20-ish minute live conversations featuring leaders in the performance marketing world speaking about the hottest topics in the industry are scheduled twice a month. Before we get to today's conversation, a quick housekeeping note. We'll be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of today's session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll collect them and we'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of this episode. You know, as performance brands continue to explore CTV as a viable and effective option to boost their campaigns, most are also maintaining a foothold in linear TV. But brands, agencies, and ad outlets are all seeking to streamline and simplify buy and sell side processes, meaning the convergence of budgets and media plans across CTV and linear is accelerating. What are brands seeking from a converged video media budget? How are agencies navigating their clients' needs? What opportunities are outlets offering to create effective spend across their varied options? Well, Take 20 host and PDMI Brand Response Council Chair Chris Foster of Modern Postcard is here, and he welcomes this trio of PDMI member media experts, LWD's Megan Kennedy, Bluewater's Shelby Nichols, and Leap Media Group's Chris Pizzurro to answer these questions and more about the convergence of CTV and linear media budgets. Team, looking forward to it. Take it away, Chris.
Great, thank you so much for that intro, Tom, and welcome in everybody. We've got some masters of our crafts today. Very excited to jump in. And like Tom said, we all know the story. CTV entered into the media channel mix. It was kind of seen as this unknown upstart. However, when it came in, it was really on the right side of consumer behavior and technology trends, right? It landed towards that targetability. It landed towards that measurability. Yet it was still on a big screen, right? The biggest screen in the house. CTV ad spending in the US is projected to grow substantially. Forecasts have it as over $26 billion in 2025, continuing to rise. Meanwhile, linear TV ad spending continues to decline, but it's still projected to reach $139 billion, right? So there's the talk of linear being this dinosaur of the marketing evolution. It's still the Tyrannosaurus Rex size compared to the mammal that is CTV. I appreciate you letting me continue with that metaphor or analogy. But the question is, how do you spend, right? When campaigns are taking advantage of both, do brands and agencies designate different budgets for different channels? Do they see this as one media spend and parsing it out between the channels itself? So to answer that, we're going to dive into these masters. Before we get started, I'd like you all to kind of please tell us about yourself and about your business. And Megan, we'll start with you.
Sure. I'm Megan Kennedy. I'm an SVP of Account Services at Lockard & Wexler Direct, an attention art company. And really, we are a full service performance marketing agency. Our approach is really about using those mass awareness channels like linear in tandem with precision targeting and CTV to really bring to the market kind of a formula that helps our clients accomplish their ROI goals using that scale and precision together in a very much hybrid approach.
Perfect. Shelby.
Yes, I'm Shelby Nichols, SVP of Media Investments and Innovation here at Bluewater. And we are a full service agency across both media and production, and really disrupting kind of the traditional agency model between strategy and media content and integrations, analytics, and commerce. So being able to really deliver business outcomes across all platforms, and really excited to dig into how, you know, the approach and changing landscape, especially from a television perspective.
Excellent. And Chris, our Emmy Award-winning guest.
Hi, everyone. Chris Pizzurro, principal here at Leap Media Group. At Leap, we simply say we put brands on TV, and we do that three ways. First, top of the funnel, we have a brand and entertainment division where we do produce half-hour shows built around a brand's attributes. So, for instance, we do travel shows with Expedia. Second thing we do is place brands into our own acquired TV shows, and then we syndicate those out to linear and CTV platforms. And then finally, we operate a programmatic trading desk for CTV. So everything from top of the funnel right down to what I call day trading on programmatic.
Fantastic. That's a great intro, everybody. Thank you. Megan, we're going to start the questions with you. So when you're preparing the campaigns for your clients, what do you tell them in plain speak language about CTV compared to linear and the two different opportunities these channels present?
Yeah, I think when we talk about linear and CTV, it's not really about one or the other, or one's in competition with the other. It's very much a strategy of how can one complement the other. We know that linear is really the scale. There's something like 6 times the impressions that lives in linear versus CTV. So we know that that's going to be just a huge important part of our mix. But really CTV brings that precision targeting, the agility, the measurement, the deterministic measurement that allows agencies to be accountable for performance results. So it's really a total video approach. We don't like to silo the channels. And really the delegation between the two, it really kind of roots itself in performance. So really leaning on, tech stacks to really give us that, insight into, how the audience is responding in each channel. And like I said, it's really holistic. It's not that one is better than the other. It's about, what is the ultimate goal for the campaign and what channel do we need to leverage in order to reach that goal. So very much equal parts, kind of equal playing fields when we evaluate opportunities between the two.
I like that. I appreciate that. I want to get back to that, one of those ideas, but one of the things you just talked about was kind of an and or not or type of approach. So Chris, I guess I'll ask you, you've got a broad range of clients from big brands to SMBs. Are you able to learn when you apply a linear and a CTV program, are you able to learn from each channel? And are you able to learn from the different kinds of clients so that when you do target, you can figure out the best media mix for these brands?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Megan said, that it's absolutely an and it's really a matter of finding that balance, because really every campaign we worked on, it's some combination of branding and engagement, right? So even say if it's a big brand like Expedia, and of course their goal is they want the consumer to watch their beautiful produced show, but ultimately the goal is going to be to engage and to book a trip, right? So in their case, the first thing is watch my beautiful show, but ultimately it comes down to the engagement. But the reverse is true for like an SMB, where they say my first goal is, I want someone to click and buy my product, which is true, but we caution them on like, well, we're just not going to run right into a click and buy campaign. You're going to have to establish some trust with the consumer, and we're going to have to do some branding beforehand. Right. So each, it's a matter of what they're putting first and how they're coming into it. So then for us becomes an exercise in planning, as Megan mentioned, and across linear and CTV, and what creative versions are you doing something different for linear than CTV, or are you flighting? Are you doing the branding before the call to action? Is it global? Is it national? So I think there's nuances, right, once you kind of get where you're going. But ultimately, yeah, everything's some sort of combination of branding and engagement.
Yeah, no, I like that idea, because people say to do brand or performance, and then the brand formance idea came in. But the question is, why can't it be both within a single campaign using the appropriate channels for the job it has to do? I guess, Shelby, I'll ask you, because Bluewater has its feet in the creation of ads and the media planning, right? So when you're in that mode, are you thinking of the channels you're going to be exploiting when you're doing the creative?
I would say, and I completely agree with everything that Megan and Chris are talking about this holistic approach. And it's about who is the client, what are the goals, what are the primary KPIs to develop. Just look at television in totality and understand they're not competing, but how are they complementing? But I will say, especially from a creative perspective, And Chris just touched on that. You absolutely are looking at what are the right lengths, what is the right message when we're over on linear, what do those cut downs look like, what lengths do we want to test over on CTV where we know that it's going to perform better. But I think it's also imperative, and we've seen so much success in allowing CTV to also be a creative testing ground, because you have that connective tissue. You're getting those quicker results in to understand what creative is driving more engagement. Is there, or even doing those A/B tests. Okay, we'll have a QR code. We may not be getting scans, but is that actually increasing session volume? Is that bringing people down funnels? So being able to do those quickly, take those to market quickly, and be able to get those insights with the deterministic data versus having to put a lot of spend against it in order to get enough data back from a linear perspective. We've actually, and I think being able to have the team working together and sharing insights, it can be from a creative perspective, but also from a network perspective or, genre perspective, to say, okay, over on CTV, I'm seeing these networks are really killing it. Perhaps that, should land in a testing plan in, future rollouts, or what is working really well over on linear, and how can we then build that into our CTV strategy that news is doing really, really well. Perhaps we should be leaning in a bit more on that, into that particular genre, for example, because at the end of the day, for the consumer, television is television, regardless of how we buy it. So just ensuring that we are reaching the right people on the big screen.
Oh, I like that idea a lot. Thank you for sharing that insight, where you can use a channel to actually test different creative, test ideas, CTAs, actions, and then with that learning, apply that to the much larger commitment of a linear play. So I love that. I'm going to ask then all of you, because, Shelby, you just touched on different kinds of brand categories that would be appropriate. Are there different brand niches or brand categories that are suited better for linear or to CTV? Megan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, categories like autos, perhaps insurance, pharmas, brands that need that mass awareness, there's no brainer. You're going to have linear as a large part of your buy. That fast awareness, to build metrics like trust and credibility, if those are going to be pillars in your ultimate goal, like they have to be there. So I think categories like that are really going to have to prioritize linear. And on the CTV side, I think that it comes down to, it's everyone at this point. It's really not just older skewing for linear, younger skewing for CTV, because we're seeing a younger audience come to linear for things like live sports. Was the MTV VMAs did a huge number, right? Because they flipped to CBS. I feel like there's generational things happening that are bringing that younger audience, award shows, live sports. So there's still stuff going on linear for each audience. And then I think the wider adoption of smart TV usage in the older demographics is really letting that adults 50+ audience get a little more familiar with CTV and streaming, and it's becoming more widespread. So even though it's not as popular, the numbers are really strong. So it's kind of like fair game everywhere. It's not like there's clear lanes like there were 10 years ago.
That's interesting. Chris, what's your take on that?
Yeah, exactly. Where if you asked that question 3 years ago, we would have done the old, TV's for this and streaming's for this and CTV's for this. Like we've been saying, it's really, you really just have to do your homework for each brand and dig into it. I just got off a client call just before, and they're like, no, we love TV. We want that older audience. They've actually been on CTV, and now they're coming over to linear because they've either maxed out on their social or are getting what they think they got out of CTV. They literally like, no, we want people with more money who are older, who do still watch linear TV. So yeah, I think it's really fair game, as Megan mentioned. And it's really just digging into the details and finding the right combination for that brand.
Right. So Shelby, I'll ask you then, when you're talking with clients, do they have an expectation of going to CTV first before linear? Or are they coming in with an open canvas saying, you guys tell me? Do they have any biases when they talk to you about their programs?
You know, it can depend. It could be budget dependent. It could be geo dependent. So perhaps they're not ready for a national campaign. We may want to focus on regional or local buys. So in that case, we may say, let's start with CTV. Let's prove this out. Let's see what television in general can do for you. Or I don't see them coming with as many preconceived notions, except for perhaps those in the senior category, which to your point, Chris, there is this notion of it should just be linear. It's like, well, let's not only is it now hit critical mass and has for years, but we do know that it's actually fast channels that are driving the adult 55 plus adoption, which is exactly where we need to be. That's where performance works really well. But I think being able to also provide the incremental reach and the full view of their television campaign and showing it's not just in 18 to 44 where we're getting incremental reach over your linear campaign. Here's everybody 65 plus, 55 plus that is additive to these television efforts that's critical in kind of telling that story and perhaps even dispelling the notions that the channel isn't right for a particular vertical or category. I think it's really about taking a step back, understanding what are your goals and who are we trying to talk to use the channel effectively. It's not that it's off the table for anyone. It's just a matter of what is the strategy that we're going to implement to make sure that we're successful. Understanding, is it purely phone driven? If that's the case, then we know CTV is not going to make the phone ring like linear campaign well. But
Correct.
If there are other goals in there, then let's make sure we're crafting that campaign so that we're hitting your overall KPIs or supplementing and even to Chris's point, you have to build brand and we can measure that through the brand lift studies and understand what the impact is, but we have to educate before we can convert. So let's just make sure we have this balanced portfolio that's going to deliver the business outcomes that are required.
Yeah, and that's an interesting, way to ask your clients to be a little bit patient with the approach, right? Educate before converting. Boy, that's a tough ask for a lot of brands, right? When they're spending money, right? I mean, come on, hey,
of course.
Okay, in education, are you kidding me? Because Megan, you mentioned earlier that when it comes to measurement, that CTV brings that precision in the measurement, whereas the linear really creates that brand awareness. It's really hard to measure linear. We know that unless there's a TV, phone or something like that. But even now with consumer behavior, if they see a phone, they see the brand, they're just going to Google the brand and go that route. Oftentimes, unless they're really ready to buy. And you said you use the tech stacks to do that audience measurement to kind of figure that out. So Megan, when you talk to clients, what kind of expectations do you set in terms of these outcomes, in terms of what they should be looking at for, what KPIs, the right KPIs at a certain stage of the campaign?
Yeah, I think, when we have historical data, that's the best scenario, because then we have benchmarks. So even if it's if you're testing into CTV for the first time, you're in a retail category. If we have retail clients that we can benchmark, okay, we need to see a cost per site visit of X, then that really helps us level set expectations to know out of the gate, after a couple days in market, are we close? Are we killing it? Or is this not looking great? So I think benchmarks for historical performance are huge. And really it's about testing and learning. Sometimes if you don't have anything at all, you have to give it time for the data to mature. You have to give time for clearance to build. You have to accumulate, a healthy amount of impressions in market to even, have stable data to make a decision on. So I think educating our clients is a huge part of testing into, CTV space and finding the right balance for their business.
Yeah, so not only are you telling the clients that they have to educate their audience, but you have to tell the clients, we have to educate you. So just there's a whole learning process that's going on throughout. Shelby, I'll ask you, and then Chris, I want to finish up with my final question for you. So Shelby, when it comes to the array of choices that the brand has, especially when they go to Bluewater, you have a whole suite of and portfolio of different services. Do you try to figure out which ones would be best kind of as an a la carte menu, or do you try to show them everything you can do and then kind of, filter but the right choice? How does your approach work?
I would say the latter. I mean, there are so many options here, but I think it's understanding what are we trying to accomplish, and then also kind of working bottom of the funnel up, making sure that the site is optimized for the user experience, ensuring that paid search is fully funded. What do we have going on social? Understanding everything else that's happening, because knowing as soon as whether it's linear or CTV, which we can measure, what is that conversion lift on your bottom funnel channels? We know it's going to have an impact all the way downstream. So it's understanding what is available, what data is available for us to use, and then crafting that plan to ensure that we're taking advantage of every possible resource, but that we're building it from the ground up for success.
Roger. No, that's helpful. I appreciate that. And then Chris, we'll wrap up with you. You have such a unique business where you're doing your own content, but you're also partnering with folks developing content. How do you see this future of advertising? Do you think that content and the brands that can create their own content will? Do you think that that's kind of a natural convergence over the next couple of years?
No, as much as I'd love to say every brand should do branded entertainment, that'd be wonderful. But no, that's just not correct. No, there's a limited number of brands that can actually do it and do it well. So no, I actually that's not, that wouldn't be the recommendation. And now where every kid and now almost everyone is a creator of content. I think it really just comes down to if it's long form, it has to tell a story. If you're a brand, you have to tell a story. If you're Steven Spielberg, you have to tell a story. All right. It really comes down, when you're doing long form, it comes down to the story. And that's really the thing that matters. Like we have Gemma Stafford, Bigger Bolder Baking, started on social, huge YouTube sensation. We now do half-hour shows. Cooking works really well to translate from short to long form, because inherent in her baking a cake, it's a story. You're starting with the ingredients, you're putting them in the oven, you have an outcome that's there. As simple as that sounds, it's like, yeah, a cooking show actually already has a story arc to it.
Yeah.
So
well,
we always
I
say,
just finished watching the Great British Bake Off, so I get it.
Like there is actually storytelling inherent there. So yeah, unless a brand, unless you're lending themselves to an actual story, or you're having someone make the Barbie movie for you. Otherwise, no. I think brands have to be really careful about when they're creating their own content.
That's very sage advice. It's wonderful. Well, like I mentioned to you guys at the beginning of the broadcast, this would be over before you knew it. And we're now ready for some questions from the audience. So Thomas, who do we have and what do we have for our fabulous guests?
Wonderful job, everyone. Thank you. We have some great questions to toss out to you. First one is for Megan, and anyone can jump in afterwards, but Megan mentioned needing a number of impressions needed to make media decisions. How does that number vary between targeted OTT impressions versus linear impressions?
I think that knowing that we're using deterministic modeling for OTT measurement, the number's less, because it's just, there's more confidence in the data, there's more transparency in the data. Our clients feel that they can validate and feel better about less impressions. I think on the linear side, knowing that most of that is based on brand metrics, potentially probabilistic modeling. It takes a little more just for clients to have confidence in making decisions based on that data. You know, it also depends on your audience size. If you have a smaller audience size, you know, that can take longer to reach, you know, that pool of impression delivery. So I think there's a couple variables in that.
Anyone else want to jump in? We can move on. All right, now I'll go on to the next one, which is kind of, this was actually a good lead into the second question. This is more of a data question. Are there data or technology innovations that are helping to close the reach gap between CTV and linear?
It's the reach, yeah.
The reach gap.
I think he's meaning that linear has such a big, broad reach.
Right.
CTV has a smaller reach. What are the ways in which we can close that gap?
Yeah, but more,
Gotcha.
I think the CTV reach is like it meets out over time, where the linear reach is right then and there. So maybe that's the gap we're talking about.
Gotcha.
And I think that's where understanding incremental reach and understanding not only the demos that you are reaching with a deterministic data set, and understanding how it's complementing your linear campaign and seeing even where the overlap is. I think that's another piece of that is very interesting to continue to measure. How are we also increasing frequency and building upon what we're already doing over on linear? But I mean, I think we're seeing more impressions, and the growth in the CTV space has been, you know, it's surpassed cable at this point. So it's just a matter, I mean, I think there's certainly impressions available, just a matter of finding the right targeting, but I think also measuring it appropriately to fully understand the complete television picture from my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up broadcast into cable. So, you know, broadcast used to be your big number for your reach. And then all of a sudden cable came along, and, you know, it got broken up into smaller pieces. So I was always taught and trained way back then of dispersion works, right? If you can't just get your reach from one place, then you're going to want to have it dispersion across 10 or 20 cable networks at the time. Well, now translate that into CTV, and I may need 300 endpoints in which to run the dispersion. So going back to the question of that, we do have technology, and we do have ad servers, and we do have programmatic to be able to go in there. Thank God, because there's no way we're going to do a buy across 300 or 400 CTV channels. So the fact of, you know, technology causeth the problem, and technology has solved for the problem in one way or another. Yeah. So yes, and that's where we try to use programmatic as the tool in order to execute on the reach that you get with dispersion.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for leading me into this next question. This is like a nice flow we got going here. Mentioning programmatic, as linear and CTV continue to converge, programmatic transactions are increasing. This one's for all three of you to take a crack at. Where do each of you think the human touch in the buy-sell relationship will remain the most important?
I think it's still complete. I think it's critical. I mean, there's still that communication with all of our publisher reps and having those negotiations and bringing in understanding, you know, the access to inventory. That programmatic isn't just AI bots controlling and making decisions. It requires that human analysis and intervention, but I think it's still, I mean, it's as much from a strategic standpoint as it is from an execution standpoint, being able to pull all the right levers and understanding what is going to increase the performance. But I think there's still, even though it's programmatic and it's all in a digital environment, the relationships are still critical to ensure that we're getting to the right supply and being able to get to that at the right price.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that of I've got two people all day long still, you just don't set it up and it runs, right? every other day something falls down, some tag doesn't work, some art,
Yep.
right? The metadata is wrong. Blah, blah. So like, yeah, we have two people all day cleaning stuff up because you watch it and you see the curve start to go down, and then you're like, oh, something's wrong. Let's go in and fix something. So yeah, for any technologies that said, oh, you just plug it in and it works. No, they're lying to you. So yeah, we've got to watch humans have to watch programmatic big time. Now maybe some of that's solved by AI in the future, and sure, okay. But for right now, yeah, there's nothing like humans being able to go in and troubleshoot something.
Phew.
There you go, Chris. You're good.
Thank goodness.
I couldn't agree more. I know. Especially all the times I have to turn AI off. I'm like, I understand what you see in the data, but it's making, we have to put some guardrails on that and ensure that it doesn't make the wrong decisions based on one piece of data. But that's just a trader at heart, so can't let it go.
I think for AI in general, that human element of overseeing things and QCing the output, as great as it is and as time saving and the efficiencies it's brought to the industry, knowing that decades of experience are still at play, you can't just rely on the technology. I think it's just a huge important, being able to QC and have a human really make decisions when it comes down to it, I think is a huge part of every tech that we're overseeing.
Great. Last one that I'll go with today, and it's a big picture one that someone sent in. We're seeing such rapid change here. If each of you could fast forward 6 months, and we all know agencies are the pivot point of client desires and what the outlets are actually offering. What do you think one of the biggest challenges will be for agencies 6 months from now in this convergence?
I would say, I mean, it changes so rapidly. I feel like every quarter there's new innovations or new things to test. But one thing I am curious to see, especially as the IAB is putting the infrastructure around pause ads and home screen takeovers and all of these other shoppable ads and these which are not necessarily emerging formats. They've been growing, but now they're going to be standardized, and the ability to bring those into PMPs, the ability to bring them into our campaigns in a bigger way, I think will be interesting to see what the measurement looks like, and if there's just how we're able to track that in because of their unique formats, and the data that will be passing through is one thing that we're really keeping an eye on to ensure that we're ahead of the curve or be able to implement those strategies into our 2026 campaigns.
Yeah, Megan, go ahead.
I would just say streamlining processes, across linear and digital. I think that's a huge part of it. Just making sure that, negotiations and processes and all of those things coming together to make it easy instead of having separate teams or separate IOs. Or I think the workflow will become more efficient as that starts to converge as the two channels come together.
Yeah, and I just think as far as for agencies that clients may be tempted to do more self-service themselves. Now they can just go into a Roku ad manager or Universal Ads and that sort of thing, and just maybe treat it as they do paid search or something. As we all know, TV is so much more nuanced than that. Back to our storytelling, back to everything that. So I think there's going to be clients that are certainly be tempted to do that, and some of them may just be able to pull it off, and that's great. But still, when it comes to the TV side of stuff, an agency partner is a beautiful thing to have.
Great. Good stuff, guys. I'm going to rejoin you here and wrap this up. And also, Megan, thank you. I had left actually one question on the table, but you kind of answered it there with your last answer. So thanks for taking an angle on it. That was great. Anyway, how I see you on the screen, Chris, Megan and Shelby, wonderful job. Thank you so much for your time and for being here. We appreciate it. We'll be able to share this on our YouTube channel within a couple days, so folks who missed it can see it there. Our next Take 20 episode is set for next Wednesday, November 19th. We're going back-to-back weeks due to Thanksgiving the following week. Next week, we'll feature a conversation about the shifting social media landscape for performance marketers. Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to register for the webinar and check out the upcoming schedule. And online registration for our 2026 in-person events, both PDMI East in April in Miami and PDMI West October in San Diego, are open now through December 31st. You can get your 2026 event badges for 2025 prices, just $395 for PDMI members and $595 for non-members. Our badge prices will rise on January 1st, so make your plan and save today. Visit thepdmi.com and navigate to our East and West pages to get your badges now. Thanks again to all of you for being here. Thanks for checking out this episode of Take 20. Be well. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.